Liam moved slowly along the edge of the glacier, each step careful on the uneven ice. The cold air bit at his cheeks, but it was the kind of crispness he had always loved, sharp and invigorating, yet strangely comforting. At 58, he had spent most of his life in the outdoors, and even now, in retirement, the mountains and glaciers called to him with a quiet persistence that city life never could. The glacier stretched out before him, a vast expanse of blue and white, smooth in some places, jagged in others, catching the morning sun in a way that made the ice almost glow. Light danced along the ridges and crevices, reflecting in shimmering patterns on the frozen surface. Liam paused for a moment, letting the silence sink in. He could hear the faint hiss of ice shifting, the distant crack of a calving glacier echoing like a muted drumbeat. He adjusted the strap of his worn backpack and let his gaze wander. There was a peace here that words could never fully capture, a calm that filled his chest and loosened the tight knots of worry he carried from everyday life. He had been here many times before, yet every visit held the same quiet wonder. Even in the harsh cold, there was warmth in the solitude, a sense of belonging that had nothing to do with people and everything to do with the raw, enduring beauty of the natural world. Liam leaned on his walking stick, letting the silence envelop him. His mind wandered to memories of past hikes, long winter treks, and quiet evenings by a campfire, the scent of pine and smoke lingering in the air. Yet today felt different. Somehow, the glacier seemed almost alive, breathing slowly beneath the thin morning mist. A distant bird called out, and the echo carried across the ice, a soft reminder that life persisted even in the most remote corners of the world. For a long while, Liam simply stood there, listening, the subtle sounds of ice shifting, wind brushing over the glacier, and water trickling through cracks filled the space around him. He closed his eyes, letting the cold sting of the air sharpen his senses, while the sun on his face reminded him that he was exactly where he was meant to be, quiet, still, and fully present. Liam's quiet reverie was broken by a sudden movement near the far edge of the glacier. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the sunlight on the ice, or perhaps a shadow shifting with the wind, but then he saw it again, larger this time, thrashing in the icy water. A massive figure was struggling in the glacier-fed stream that cut through the ice. Liam's heart quickened as he realized what it was. A Bigfoot mother, enormous and powerful, yet clearly in distress. Her fur was dark and soaked, clinging to her broad frame, and her movements were frantic. She clawed at the slick ice, trying to pull herself out, but each attempt ended with her slipping back into the freezing water. For a moment, Liam simply watched, his breath catching in his chest. He had seen countless creatures in the wild during his years in the mountains, but nothing like this. There was panic in her eyes, raw and unmistakable, and yet beneath it, he saw a flicker of intelligence, awareness. She knew she was in danger and that she needed help. Liam's instincts kicked in. He scanned the surroundings quickly, looking for a safe path down to the edge without startling her further. The water was treacherous, a swirling mixture of meltwater and broken ice. He could feel the cold biting at his hands through his gloves as he gripped the walking stick tighter. His mind raced, but he kept his movements deliberate and slow, careful not to make sudden gestures. The Bigfoot mother paused for a moment, her head tilting toward him. Liam could sense her caution, the silent questioning in her eyes. He whispered softly, though he knew she might not understand the words, "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." For several long seconds, they simply regarded each other. The tension was palpable. Yet there was also a strange, unspoken connection forming. Liam could feel his heart pounding. But not with fear. This was concern, empathy, and determination all at once. He knew that one wrong move could make her panic and slip further into the water. Then, with a slow, steady breath, Liam took the first step forward. The ice creaked beneath his boots, and the mother flinched, but she didn't retreat. She was exhausted, her energy nearly spent, yet her presence demanded respect. Liam realized in that instant that this was not just an act of rescue, it was a delicate negotiation between two beings, one human and one wild, each trying to understand the other. The wind blew across the glacier, carrying a biting chill, but Liam felt a warmth rising from within, a sense of purpose. He had never known fear like this, not true, urgent fear mixed with compassion. He knew the next moments would matter more than anything else he had done in his life. Liam edged closer to the glacier's rim, every step deliberate, boots crunching softly on the fragile ice. He kept his hands visible, gripping the walking stick lightly. Showing no hint of threat, the Bigfoot mother shivered in the cold water, her massive form trembling with exhaustion. Liam could see the panic in her amber eyes, the desperate clawing at the slippery ice. He scanned the area quickly, spotting a thick rope he had brought in his pack for crossing rough ice fields. With careful hands, he secured one end to a nearby rock and coiled the other loosely, ready to throw. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "I've got you. Stay calm." The words weren't for her understanding, they were for grounding his own nerves, steadying the tension in the air. The mother hesitated, her gaze fixed on him. Liam could see her evaluating him, measuring the risk. He remained still, crouched slightly, making himself smaller, non-threatening. Slowly, he tossed the rope toward her, aiming for the edge where she struggled most. It landed across the ice in a gentle arc. She flinched but didn't bolt. With a deep breath, Liam braced himself. He leaned over just enough to guide her hand toward the rope. At first, she missed it, slipping back into the water with a splash that sent a shiver down Liam's spine. He kept his voice calm, his movements steady. "It's okay. You can do this. I won't let go." The next attempt was better. Her massive hand caught the rope. Liam felt the pull immediately strong, yet cautious. He anchored himself against the rock and tugged gently, providing just enough assistance without forcing her. Slowly, she inched upward, muscles straining against the ice. Water splashed over Liam's boots and legs, chilling him, but he hardly noticed. His focus was entirely on her safety. After tense minutes that seemed much longer, she finally reached the edge. Liam extended a gloved hand for additional support. She hesitated, then accepted it, placing her huge palm in his. The sensation was surreal, warm, wet, and heavy, yet gentle. Step by step, he helped her hoist herself onto the solid ice. Once she was out, she collapsed slightly, breathing heavily, water dripping from her fur. Liam stayed close, crouched beside her, speaking softly. "You're safe now. It's all right." She looked at him, tilting her head in a way that seemed almost grateful, almost human. For a long moment, they simply regarded each other in silence, connected by mutual relief and understanding. The mother's shivering slowed as she caught her breath. Liam offered her his jacket, holding it open, but she shook her massive shoulders to dry herself instead. There was trust there now, a quiet acknowledgement that he meant no harm. Liam allowed himself a small, relieved smile. The tension drained from his shoulders, replaced by an unexpected warmth. He realized this was more than just saving a creature, it was a profound, unspoken bond, forged in danger, grounded in empathy. The glacier was still cold, the wind still sharp, but for a brief moment, the world felt gentle, and life itself felt suspended in quiet awe. He stayed with her, just in case, aware that this fragile moment of trust could be lost in an instant. Yet, deep down, Liam knew they had crossed an invisible threshold together, one that would linger far beyond the icy cliffs. Liam crouched a few feet away from the Bigfoot mother, careful to give her space while remaining close enough to offer reassurance. She sat on the ice, enormous and imposing, yet her movements were slow and deliberate now, as if assessing the safety of this human who had just pulled her from near certain danger. Her fur was matted, glistening with water, and her chest rose and fell with the deep, measured breaths of one still shaken but no longer panicked. For a long moment, neither spoke nor moved. Liam let the silence stretch, listening to the soft hiss of the glacier, the distant echo of shifting ice, and the faint dripping of meltwater around them. In that quiet, a strange understanding began to take shape. He did not need words to communicate. Every gesture, every glance, carried meaning. His calm presence, steady breathing, and gentle posture spoke of safety, of patience, of respect. The Bigfoot mother tilted her head, her amber eyes following his movements. She studied him with intelligence and caution, yet there was no aggression. Liam realized that she was learning, just as he was. He had seen fear in wild creatures before, but never such cautious curiosity intertwined with a flicker of trust. It was a fragile thread, easy to break, but undeniable. Liam adjusted his sitting position, keeping himself low and non-threatening. He reached slowly for his backpack, producing a small piece of cloth to gently pat the ice near her, demonstrating that he meant no harm. She watched carefully, then mimicked a soft movement, brushing her hand along the ice, beside him. It was tentative, almost shy, but it was a gesture of acknowledgement, a silent handshake between two beings from entirely different worlds. He whispered softly, more for himself than for her, "You're safe. Nothing will hurt you here." The words seemed to linger in the cold air, carrying warmth and reassurance. The mother's eyes softened slightly, and she settled her massive frame more comfortably onto the ice. She occasionally glanced toward the glacier waters she had struggled in, as if remembering the danger she had escaped, but her focus returned quickly to him, a sign that she now trusted his presence. In that quiet communion, Liam felt a rare serenity wash over him. There was no rush, no need to explain or understand fully. He simply existed beside her, observing, breathing, acknowledging her being as deeply as he hoped she acknowledged his. The air was crisp. The sun reflected off the ice in soft, diffused light. And for the first time, the glacier felt less like a remote wilderness and more like a shared space of understanding. Time seemed to slow. Liam knew that this moment, fleeting as it might be, was profound. In the heart of the icy expanse, a human and a wild creature had found a way to meet without fear, without force, in mutual respect and calm. And for Liam, that realization carried a weight far beyond words. A quiet joy, a reassurance that compassion could reach even the most unexpected corners of the world. Liam's eyes wandered beyond the mother, scanning the jagged ice and rocky ledges near the glacier's edge. That's when he saw it, a smaller movement. Subtle, but unmistakable. A tiny figure struggled against the ice, wedged between rocks and a thin layer of frozen water. It was her baby. The sight made his chest tighten. The mother Bigfoot's gaze immediately shifted toward the source of the movement, her body tensing as a low, soft rumble escaped her throat. Liam stayed where he was, careful not to alarm her further, but his mind raced. The baby was too small, too fragile, to face the freezing water alone. Every instinct in him, one honed over decades of outdoor survival and rescue, told him he needed to act. He watched the mother shift, her enormous hands stretching toward her child. But the ice was treacherous, and she was still recovering from the ordeal in the water. The baby was slipping slightly, its tiny limbs flailing in panic, and Liam could almost feel the helplessness radiating from both mother and child. His heart ached in a way he hadn't felt in years. For several moments, Liam simply studied the situation, weighing every possible move. Any sudden action could startle the mother or endanger the baby. Yet waiting too long could be catastrophic. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves and slow his racing heart. He reminded himself, calm, steady movements, patience, respect. That was the only way forward. The mother's eyes never left him, and he could see the silent communication, her warning, her plea, and perhaps her trust. Fragile but real. Liam nodded slightly to her, an almost imperceptible gesture, as if to say, "I will help, but I mean no harm." The baby's small head turned toward him, eyes wide with fear and confusion, tugging at Liam's resolve to act with care. In that quiet, tense moment, Liam understood the stakes fully. It wasn't just a rescue, it was a delicate negotiation of trust and timing. One wrong move could shatter the fragile bond they had built in the last few minutes. He felt a mixture of empathy, urgency, and a gentle determination to ensure that both mother and child would be safe. He adjusted his gloves and prepared himself to reach the baby. Muscles tensed but movements deliberate. The glacier was silent around them. The wind hushed, as if the world itself held its breath, waiting for the next moment. Liam leaned closer to the edge of the ice, careful not to make sudden movements. The baby, Bigfoot, was wedged between rocks and slick ice, its tiny body trembling, fur plastered to its small frame. Liam's gloved hands hovered just above the child, giving him a moment to assess the safest approach. The mother watched intently, every muscle taut with tension. Her amber eyes followed Liam's every move, but there was no aggression now, only a mix of fear, concern, and cautious trust. Liam whispered softly, more to soothe himself than the baby. "I've got you. Just hold on." Slowly, he slid a hand beneath the baby, careful not to touch more than necessary, letting his fingers support its small, fragile frame. The child flinched, startled by the human presence, but Liam's calm, deliberate movements reassured it. Step by step, he eased the baby free from the ice, holding it gently against his chest. Its tiny limbs clung instinctively, and Liam felt the fragile heartbeat beneath his gloves. The mother let out a low, rumbling sound, almost like a sigh, and leaned slightly closer without moving aggressively. Liam sensed the silent communication. She understood that he meant no harm. The tension in the air was thick, but tempered by the quiet trust that had begun to form between them. Once the baby was safely in his arms, Liam adjusted his coat around it, offering warmth against the biting cold. He spoke in a soft, steady voice. "You're safe now. You're okay." The child's trembling eased slightly as it nestled closer, seeking comfort. Liam could feel the subtle relief radiating from the mother, who now relaxed her stance while still keeping a watchful eye on him. For several moments, they remained like that. Liam held the baby, and the mother observed, her expression a mixture of vigilance and gratitude. The wind whispered across the glacier, carrying the soft murmur of shifting ice, and the world seemed to pause around them. Liam marveled at the quiet intimacy of the moment, a human and a wild creature, bound together briefly by trust and compassion. He adjusted the baby carefully, ensuring it stayed warm, then slowly extended a hand toward the mother, palm open in a gesture of peace. She hesitated, then in a subtle, almost imperceptible movement, touched his hand with hers. It was a small, quiet acknowledgement, but to Liam, it was monumental, a sign that the bond they had forged in the icy wilderness was real and unbroken. Liam stayed with them, ensuring they were safe before attempting to move further from the dangerous water. The baby's breathing slowed, its small body relaxing against his chest, and the mother remained close, protective but calm. Liam knew that he had been given a rare gift, the trust of a wild creature, and the chance to protect both mother and child in a moment of vulnerability. The sun reflected softly on the glacier, casting a gentle glow over the trio. Liam felt a warmth within him that had little to do with the sun. It was the quiet satisfaction of having done the right thing, the emotional resonance of trust earned, and the profound, soothing connection between human and wild that he would carry with him long after this day ended. Liam settled onto a patch of solid ice, careful to stay close enough to the Bigfoot mother and her baby while giving them space to breathe. The baby rested against his chest, small and trembling, but slowly beginning to calm in the warmth of his coat. The mother sat a few feet away, her massive frame protective yet relaxed now, her eyes never leaving her child. For a long moment, none of them spoke or moved. The glacier around them stretched silently, vast and still, with only the soft hum of melting ice and distant echoes of shifting snow. Liam let the quiet settle over him, feeling the weight of the day and the strangeness of the encounter. It was surreal, yet profoundly calming, being present in a moment where life itself seemed fragile yet enduring. The mother shifted slightly, brushing her hand along the ice, near Liam. It was tentative, cautious, but unmistakably a gesture of acknowledgement. Liam responded with a gentle nod and a soft, reassuring smile. Though he knew she would not understand the words, the connection was beyond language. It was built on presence, empathy, and quiet trust. He adjusted the baby carefully, ensuring its tiny body remained warm against his chest. The child's breathing grew steadier, its trembling easing as it nestled closer to him. Liam could feel the fragile heartbeat against his own, a rhythmic reminder of the responsibility he bore for these two lives in this remote, icy expanse. The mother watched quietly, occasionally glancing at Liam with an intensity that felt almost human. She wasn't just observing, she was measuring, understanding, and slowly allowing herself to trust. Liam realized that their encounter had shifted. What had begun as a rescue had now transformed into a shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement that they were all participants in something rare and fragile. Time seemed suspended. The cold air bit at Liam's cheeks, but he barely noticed. The gentle sunlight reflected off the glacier, casting a soft glow on the trio. He felt a quiet sense of peace, a reassurance that this connection, however brief, was genuine. In that moment, the boundaries between human and wild, fear and trust, melted away, leaving only a fragile but profound bond that Liam knew he would carry with him long after he left this place. The sun had climbed higher, casting long, soft shadows across the glacier, when the Bigfoot mother shifted, nudging her baby gently with a massive, careful hand. Liam instinctively tightened his hold for a moment, but then loosened it as the child clung briefly before allowing itself to be lifted by its mother. The mother's amber eyes met Liam's one last time. There was a depth to that gaze he could not put into words: gratitude, understanding, and something heavier, like a quiet recognition of the bond they had shared. Liam raised a hand slightly, a small gesture of farewell, though he knew it was more symbolic than necessary. In that glance, they had communicated more than language ever could. Slowly, she stood, the baby resting securely against her chest. Each movement was deliberate, measured, as though she knew the ice could be treacherous. Liam watched her silhouette against the pale blue of the glacier, enormous and majestic, yet careful and gentle in every step. The wind shifted, carrying the subtle scent of the mountains and the faint, musky scent of the creatures he had helped save. The trio began to move toward the forested ridges beyond the ice, each step careful, almost ceremonial. Liam stayed where he was, crouched low on the glacier, feeling the weight of the moment press gently against his chest. There was a pang of sadness at seeing them leave, yet it was tempered by the warmth of having been part of their survival. He could see the mother pause briefly, glancing back over her shoulder at him. Liam lifted his hand a little higher, fingers outstretched, and for an instant, it felt as if the vast distance between human and wild had shrunk to nothing. She inclined her massive head slightly, almost a nod, before turning and moving onward, her child secure and calm. The glacier was silent once more, the only movement the shifting ice and the soft whisper of the wind. Liam exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from his shoulders. The emotional weight lingered, but it was no longer sharp. It was a quiet, resonant reminder of the trust, the compassion, and the fragile beauty of that brief encounter. For a long while, he simply watched, letting the image of the mother and child fade into the forested edge, etched in his mind like a memory he would carry forever. There was sorrow in the parting, yes, but there was also a profound sense of fulfillment. He had been present in a rare, delicate moment where life had allowed him to bridge worlds, to touch a life that would otherwise have remained unknowable. When he finally turned to make his way back across the glacier, his steps were slow but deliberate. The wind bit at his face, the cold seeped into his bones, yet a quiet warmth pulsed within him. The day had changed him, in ways subtle yet permanent, and the memory of the mother and child would stay with him, a gentle reminder of the quiet power of empathy, patience, and trust. Liam walked slowly across the glacier, each step measured, as if the ice beneath him had grown more fragile after the encounter. The wind carried the scent of snow and pine, crisp and clean, and the sunlight reflected in dazzling shards across the frozen surface. Yet his attention was not on the scenery. It was on the memory of the Bigfoot mother and her baby, moving steadily toward the forest beyond. A quiet warmth had settled in his chest, one that had little to do with the sun. He thought about the trust they had placed in him, a trust given freely in a world that often seemed indifferent. It was a rare gift, and the gravity of it lingered with each step he took back toward the familiar path. For the first time in a long while, Liam reflected on what it truly meant to help another being, to act with care without expectation. The encounter had been brief, yet its impact felt profound. He realized that life was not measured solely by human connections, but by moments of quiet empathy and understanding, even with creatures that the world might never believe existed. His mind wandered to small details: the tremble of the baby in his arms, the cautious nod of the mother, the shared silence on the ice. Those moments had altered something within him, a subtle shift that made the world feel both larger and smaller at the same time. Larger, because there were mysteries beyond his understanding, and smaller, because the bonds of compassion could bridge worlds he had never imagined. As he descended toward the forested trail, Liam felt a newfound sense of clarity. There was a serenity in knowing that he had done what was right, a quiet pride that had nothing to do with recognition or fame. The glacier, the wind, the distant echo of shifting ice all seemed imbued with a gentle approval, as if the world itself acknowledged the small act of courage and care he had offered. By the time he reached solid ground, the memory of the mother and child was already settling into his heart. He knew that life would go on, as it always did, but the experience had left an indelible mark. It had reminded him of the enduring power of patience, empathy, and presence, lessons that he would carry long after the icy peaks faded from view. Back at his small cabin nestled on the forest edge, Liam sat by the window, gazing at the distant glacier peaks now softened by the fading light of evening. The air was quiet, filled only with the faint rustle of leaves and the soft crackle of the wood stove. Yet his mind was far from the stillness around him. It lingered on the mother and baby Bigfoot, their forms etched in memory with a clarity that no photograph could capture. He reached for a worn notebook, one he kept for sketches and notes from his years in the wild. With deliberate strokes, he traced the silhouette of the glacier, then added the towering figure of the mother and the small, delicate shape of her child. Each line was a reminder, a way to hold on to the fleeting moment of connection that had changed him so profoundly. Liam reflected on the events of the day, the fear, the tension, the cautious trust, and the quiet relief that had followed. He remembered the warmth of the baby's fragile body against his chest, the careful, almost reverent gestures of the mother, and the subtle communication that had passed between them. It was a memory that refused to fade, a silent testament to the extraordinary nature of compassion and understanding. The encounter had left more than memories. It had left a quiet shift in his perspective. Life, he realized, was not only about the moments we expect or the people we know. Sometimes, it was about the silent, improbable connections, the ones that appear briefly, demand care, and vanish, leaving only their echo in the heart. The glacier, the icy waters, the fragile trust, they were all part of a story he would carry forever. A story of empathy without expectation, and courage without recognition. He leaned back in his chair, eyes closing for a moment, letting the emotions settle. There was a soothing calm in knowing that he had played a role, however small, in the survival of another life. The mother and child had returned to their world, one that few would ever glimpse, yet the bond they had shared was real, enduring, and profoundly human in its quiet way. As night fell and the stars began to emerge over the distant peaks, Liam felt a sense of peace. The glacier and the creatures who called it home were part of something larger, something timeless. And though he might never see them again, the memory stayed with him, gentle and persistent, a reminder that acts of kindness, courage, and quiet understanding leave their mark long after the moment has passed. Liam's gaze drifted to the darkening horizon. He whispered softly to the wind, as if sending a message to the mother and child. "Thank you for letting me be part of your world, even just for a little while." And in that simple acknowledgement, he felt a quiet closure, a sense that some connections, once made, never truly fade, and that life had a way of changing forever, sometimes in the softest, most unexpected ways.